Past, present, future. A sense of time rolling on, something only humans seem to experience. We can live in the past. Very often when we live in the past, we end up with a life full of regret, remorse, and resentment. Sometimes we live in the past in a kind of daydreamy nostalgia, and all of that can sour the present. On the other hand, attending to the past can be a way to grow and learn. It can be full of gratitude for the accomplishments and loves of our lives. When we focus on the future, we can get trapped in fear and anxiety and apprehension, or we can get trapped in when I win the lottery, everything will be better. On the other hand, attending to the future can be helpful and even necessary. An eye to the future might also be called responsible planning. But where we actually live in the present moment is here in this city, where people are living and dying and having car accidents, apparently. And all too often, our focus on the past or the future takes away from the present situation, and very often, it's not helpful. And when we live in the past or live in the future in unhelpful ways, our present becomes an unhappy place to be. And we lose a sense of gratitude, a sense of confidence, and we lose hope. Today, and all this month, we're going to check in on the Psalms, songs of gratitude. You're going to want to have a Bible ready for this. If you don't have a Bible on your phone, here's how you can get a Bible on your phone. It's called YouVersion. There it is. You just go get an app called YouVersion. It's really easy to use. Also, if you want to dig around in the Bible, there should be one in the pew for you. If you have a favorite Bible, bring it with you. Bring a pencil. Psalm 124 is called a song of ascents, going up to the temple in Jerusalem. In fact, if you go to Jerusalem, you can actually do this. You can walk up the steps to the temple wall. Now, that's walled in. You can't go in. But you can do this. You can stand with a group of people, read a psalm, step up a step, read a psalm, step up a step. It's called a song of ascents. And people in Israel go up to Jerusalem, not because it's north, but because it's higher than every place else. They go up to Jerusalem, and when they get to Jerusalem, they go up to the Temple Mounts. So this is a pilgrimage song. It's a song people sing on their travels. You know, it's the song you sing on a bus with a group of people you know and like. And that past, present, and future thing I was just mentioning, it's all here in Psalm 124. We've got verses 1 through 5, which are about the past, talking of the deliverance that God granted God's people. Then there's a moment of gratitude, which is always happening in the present moment. We may have gratitude for something that happened in the past, but the experience of gratitude that is reflected in verses 6 and 7 happens in the moment. And there in verse 8 is trust and hope about the future. This psalm is about how dangerous the territory has been and how terrible the crisis was and what a narrow escape we have had. And the reason it stays in the Bible is because that is common to the human experience. That's not something that just happens to me. This is not an I moment. This is a we moment. And if you're one of those people who's never had something terrible happen, I'd like to hear about that later. This psalm is actually in what we English teachers call the collective voice. It may say I, but it means we, and it really does, in the way that even if we're singing a song together, we say I, but we're part of a group. This is a collective conversation. The entire Bible is in the collective voice. Even when it says I, it means we. Because their entire understanding of who they are is who they are in relationship to the group they belong to. Individualism just doesn't really exist in the social structure of the Bible. This is something our ancestors knew better than we do. which is we belong to each other. Like it or not, we belong to each other. We have our life in community. We talked a little bit about this last week. You know, for most of human history, if you didn't belong to a community, you were as good as dead. I mean, cowboy mythology and Daniel Boone notwithstanding, we really can't just live all by ourselves. Some days that's regrettable, but most days that's good news because it's in our common life. It's in community where we experience safety, comfort, and hope. And Psalm 124 reminds us that we experience those things when we remember together the safety, comfort, and hope of God. This is where God shows up for us. In community, God shows up and we have safety. We place a very high premium on safety in our society. Think of all the forms of personal protection that we have. We got health insurance, we got home security systems, we've got guns and vaccinations. But we still can fall prey to the fearmongers among us. And then we get a sense of fear and hypervigilance. I was rather startled. I'm reading one of those big fat doorstop books about that's history. And in the last 1,000 years, homicides have dropped unbelievably. I mean, homicides today are a minuscule fraction of what they were 1,000 years ago, which isn't how it seems. We feel like it's more dangerous, and maybe it's more dangerous than last year, or maybe it's more dangerous than where you grew up, but it's not more dangerous than it was 1,000 years ago. I was always disturbed by that. And I think we're easily set up for this. I was always disturbed by one of those home security companies that had a commercial where there's this lovely middle-class woman with her lovely middle-class husband and she's giving him a kiss, and she goes off to work, and she sets the little keypad. I guess she's not going anywhere outside the house. And over on the sidewalk is someone in a hoodie, tying his shoe, looking suspicious, and suddenly he breaks in, and she calls, and some guy in the picture in the commercial is in this room that looks like it's some kind of thing from NASA behind him, and they get the bad guy. I got to tell you, this is not real. I'll tell you what's not real. Every home is chaos in the morning, right? Every home is chaos in the morning. If I set a household alarm when somebody left the house and I was the last one in the house, you want to know who's going to set that alarm off? Yeah, me too. So I've always been troubled by the use of religion as some kind of security system. If you just have God, then nothing bad will ever happen to you. And that's not what's on offer here in this psalm. That's not what's on offer. Here's what the psalm does offer. In togetherness, in community, that's where we experience comfort. Safety and comfort. Calm, steady comfort. We don't get riled up by imaginary things. We don't get riled up by small things. And sometimes if we have a lot of spiritual maturity, we don't even get riled up too much by a crisis. We just stay calm and steady. It's a hard thing. There's a story about a woman tired from her Christmas shopping who decides she's going to sit down. So she goes to Starbucks in the mall, gets herself a cup of coffee and a package of little cookies. And it's a really crowded place. So she sits down at the one empty table and begins to get out her book, or I don't know, maybe she's scrolling on her phone or something. And she's sipping her coffee, and another gentleman sits across from her. And he reaches to the middle of the table and picks up the package of cookies and opens it and eats one. She's a little startled. She doesn't know this guy. He's obviously sat there because there's no other place to sit, so she doesn't take that personally, but she's a little startled. So she takes a cookie, and then she kind of pulls the cookies closer to her. And then he reaches way over and takes another cookie. And then she quick takes another cookie. Now there's one cookie left. And his hand reaches out, and she's just about to go off, and he picks it up, and he breaks it in half and offers her half. Well, she's so angry. She's so worked up. She's positively shaking, and she just grabs her stuff and storms off. And she gets to her car, and she's so upset, she starts to cry, so she reaches into her purse for a tissue, and what does she find? Package of cookies. We are hyper-vigilant people. We are conditioned these days to be hyper-vigilant, to see trouble everywhere. I have a friend who says every time he gets on the freeway, he anticipates which person is going to be a problem for him, and he spends 20 minutes in a prolonged anger fantasy at someone who has yet to do anything and he doesn't even know their name. You know, we're always ready for a fight. Well, some of us are. Some of y'all aren't, but a lot of us are looking to see who's against us. And it was like this before we had a contentious election. It's been this way for years, where we anticipate trouble. We even project backwards, some of us. Some of us project backwards, and we look at our past, and we are dragging around a bag of rocks called resentment, and we can't just drop the rocks. And we rehearse over and over the injustices of days gone by. And we see this happening culturally, too. And then we scan the horizon, like my friend on the freeway, for future threats. But when we pay attention to God's goodness, when, as the psalmist invites us to, we remember God's goodness, we experience hope. We begin to live a life of trust. Not trust that everything will go our way. Not trust that nothing bad will ever happen to us. Just trust that God will be with us, usually in the form of one another. We experience the presence of God, and we have hope. And today we're practicing all of this in this community today. We've remembered those whom we have loved, who have taught us, cared for us, been there to keep us safe, comforted us, inspired us, encouraged us. Our past speaks of God with us. And we are in this very moment reminded with gratitude of those people. And regardless of what's going on outside our doors, for just a moment, we are here breathing in some gratitude and remembering that God is on our side. And we have our saints here, and we have our saints here, and we have our saints in all kinds of places of our lives to remind us. I've been in trouble before, I'll be in trouble again, says the psalm. God's gotten me out of it before, God will do it again. Well, of course, God is on our side, which says more about God than it says about us. God is on the side of love and justice for us. God is on the side of us, humanity. God's in love with all us flawed humans. You know those people you dislike with a passion that seethes? Bad news. God adores them. I have no idea how. But I'm not God. Having God on our side is no guarantee that things will go our way when trouble arises. This is not a promise that all will be well, that you just need to wait for God to do God's thing and nothing really bad will happen. We know that's not true. Come on. Nor is it a magic incantation relieving us of the responsibility to do our part. I belong to a 12-step program, and they're just chock-a-block with slogans, and one of them is, do your footwork and leave the results up to God. Sitting around wishing and hoping is not footwork. We do our part so that God can do God's part. Nor are suffering or death or defeat indications that God has abandoned you. At the heart of this psalm is this profound understanding that most of us only get a little bit sometimes, but that we are longing for, that we are striving for. It's why we are here with one another, seeking a spiritual path, freedom from fear and fullness of hope. is what a spiritual journey offers us. Freedom from fear and fullness of hope is what the presence of God offers us. Freedom from fear and fullness of hope is what shows up when we show up with and for each other. When we speak out loud about our spiritual journey, when we listen to others, when we walk with each other. When we've been in trouble before, we'll be in trouble again. God is with us. And not because God is on our side and not on somebody else's side, but because God is on our side. Our side. How else could we be here today? How else could we have survived what we have survived? How else could we still be walking after all we have endured, says the psalmist. We know that God is on our side, for the book of Romans says nothing in heaven and earth can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. Let Israel say, our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. Amen.